strip everything away, the temples, the festivals, the scriptures, the philosophy, the thousands of gods, devis, devtas, go back far enough in the tradition's own imagination, and what remains is this: a tree, a teacher, and a handful of students sitting close together to listen. The tradition even has an image for it: Dakṣiṇāmūrti, Śiva as the first teacher, seated under a banyan tree facing south, teaching sages, rishis, munis, older than himself. And in the tradition's telling, he isn't even speaking. The highest teaching is passing in silence. Every year, on the full moon of the Hindu month of Asad Purnima, is a festival that lands in usually June, late June or July. And close to 1 billion people mark a festival for exactly this. Not to celebrate a god or war or wealth or rain, but for the teacher. It's called Guru Purnima, literally the teacher's full moon. To understand the festival, you have to start with the word itself. Guru. That word is so famous and it's traveled so far, hasn't it? We have tech gurus, marketing gurus, management gurus, that it's easy to forget that it means actually something very precise. Linguistically, guru as a word in the Sanskrit language means heavy, weighty. It comes from the same ancient Indo-European root that gives Latin gravis, and through it English words like gravity and grave. So a guru is someone whose voice matters, it has weight, whose words land and whose presence has mass. And here's the detail I personally love. In Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi, and several other Indian languages, the modern word for gravity is actually gurutvakarsana, literally the pull of heaviness, the pull of guruness. Think about that. The teacher and the forces that hold entire planets in orbit share a name. It's profound. The tradition itself, though, cherishes a different reading. A Sanskrit text called the Advayataraka Upaniṣad, composed somewhere around 2000 years ago, splits the word in two. There's gu, darkness, ru, it's remover. So the guru is one who dispels darkness. Now, there are some academic linguists who will tell you politely that this is a folk origin, etymology. The heavy derivation is the more academic and historical one, but the tradition has never cared much for that. And honestly, both readings are correct, in my opinion. They're just telling you the same thing from different angles. This is a person whose substance brings light, whose words matter, and who guides you. And notice what kind of relationship this vocabulary assumes. The student is a śiṣya, meaning one who is willing to be shaped. The texts they're studying together are called the Upaniṣads, a word traditionally glossed as sitting down near, together. It's not a lecture hall, it's not a library. Knowledge, therefore, in this tradition's deepest sense of self-understanding, it's not a thing that's stored in objects. It's rather a flame that's passed from one lamp to another, and it only passes at close range. Which raises a question. If the teacher matters this much, then why is this entire festival named after one specific man? Guru Purnima has an older name, Vyasa Purnima, the full moon of Vyasa, because tradition holds this to be the birth date of Rishi Veda Vyasa, the sage who was born, the Puranas say, to Sage Parasara and Satyavati of Mahabharata fame, who was a fisherman's daughter and later became a queen. And what tradition credits to this one figure, Veda Vyasa, is staggering. The Vedas, the oldest scriptures, once existed, the story goes, as not four but as a single vast body of chant. It eventually grew too immense for human memory. Vyasa's great act was therefore academic in nature, was editorial. He divided that one huge Veda, enormous Veda, into four: the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda, and entrusted each to a chief disciple: Paila, Vaisampayana, Jaimini, Sumantu. That act is literally his name. Vyas means the arranger, the divider. Tradition then goes further, crediting him with the Mahabharata, dictated in the beloved telling to Sri Ganesha as his scribe, along with the Puranas and the Brahma Sutras as other texts. Now it's time for a moment of honesty. Historians see in Veda Vyasa something closer to a title than a biography, meaning maybe not one person, but a personification of many generations of anonymous compilers, writers, authors, editors. And it's the tradition's way of giving a face to the enormous, centuries-long work of arranging its own inheritance. The tradition's self-understanding and the scholarly reconstruction may differ here a bit, and both deserve to be stated plainly. But what's beautiful either way is this. What this festival canonizes, it's not about a warrior or a king. That's not what this festival is celebrating. It's celebrating an editor, a curator of knowledge, not a king. And to this day, in traditional settings, the seat from which any teacher expounds scripture and knowledge is called the Vyasapita, Vyasa's seat. Every teacher who has ever sat down to explain something difficult is, in that tradition's eyes, sitting in Vyasa's seat, the Vyasapita. Have you ever had that eureka moment, that light bulb moment whenever one of your favorite teachers has explained something and it just clicked for you and you got it? That's a Vyasapita. It's a teacher sitting in Vyasa's seat. But this full moon doesn't belong to one tradition, and that's where it gets really interesting. Walk into a Buddhist monastery on the same full moon, and you'll find a festival here too. Buddhists hold that on the Asad full moon, the Buddha, 7 weeks after his awakening, walked to the deer park at Sarnath, and he delivered his first sermon to 5 former companions, the Dhammacakkappavattana. Please forgive my pronunciation. But these were the turning of the wheel of Dharma. You may have seen this wheel before. It's the one on India's flag. The Buddhist teaching tradition dates its own beginning to this exact day. In the Jain tradition, the Jains mark it as well. By their tradition, this is the day Sri Mahavir accepted his first disciple, Indrabhuti Gautama. And this was the moment a solitary realization became a lineage. And in the Saiva and Yogic traditions, this moon is when Sri Siva himself, the Adi Guru, meaning the first teacher, that silent figure under the banyan tree from our opening, this was when he first transmitted knowledge to the 7 primordial sages, the rishis, the Sapta rishis. So we have 3 traditions, 1 message. Enlightenment alone is not enough. The day everything actually begins is the day someone teaches. So why this moon, though, you may be wondering? Well, here's the wonderfully practical answer. The Asad full moon marks the doorstep of the monsoon season in India, the beginning of Chaturmasya, the 4 rain-soaked months when India's wandering monks and teachers traditionally stopped wandering and stayed put in one place. Roads flooded, travel ceased or paused. And so, for 4 months, these teachers, rishis, munis were findable and the students gathered. And so, for 4 months, the teachers were findable and students gathered. The rains, in effect, created the academic year. Guru Purnima is therefore its opening ceremony. Which brings up the question nobody romantic probably wants to ask. Who paid for all this? In the classic gurukula, literally meaning the teacher's household, the student didn't commute to get his knowledge or her knowledge. The student lived in it, in the teacher's home, for years until they graduated. They tended cattle, gathered firewood, they studied at dawn, and the striking part to modern eyes, there was no tuition, there was no fees. The learning itself was not a commodity that was sold. The system ran on a completely different economic engine than the one we're used to seeing today. Students on alm rounds in nearby villages, the community feeding its scholars, and above that, kings and wealthy merchants endowing teachers with land grants and patronage, because sustaining knowledge, it was understood as a ruler, as a king's dharma. There it is again, the same logic we saw in our dharma film. The worldly machinery quietly carrying the sacred. Payment did exist in practical terms, but it was at the end, not at the beginning, and that changes everything. The parting gift, known as the Guru Dakṣiṇā, was offered by the graduating student. But whether it was jewels, money, service, or a task, not necessarily money, but maybe a service or a task, but it was sized to gratitude and practical means of that student rather than a price list. In fact, the oldest graduation speech that we possess, we'll come to it soon, the teacher's parting instructions include the line, "Bring your teacher the wealth he desires, and do not cut the family line." Very practical. Fees at the end as blessing rather than barrier. Education as a gift economy. The tradition also preserved the story where that beautiful custom between a student and a teacher turned dark. Ekalavya, the tribal boy refused by the royal teacher Drona, who taught himself archery before a clay image of the Guru, surpassed the Kauravas and the Pandavas in the Mahabharata, and was then asked as his Guru Dakṣiṇā for his right thumb. Very political in nature, but he gave it. The Mahabharata itself, when you read it, tells us this with visible unease, and it has been read for centuries as the system's own truthful confession, a story about who was excluded from the circle of teaching, along with the politics of it all. The tradition kept the story anyways. That too is a kind of honesty. So what did a teacher actually say when he let a student go? Well, we know, word for word. Around 2,500 years ago, the Taittiriya Upaniṣad recorded the address a teacher gives students leaving the gurukula. The philosopher president of India, Sri Radhakrishnan, liked to call it the world's oldest surviving convocation address. It's still recited today. It begins, Satyam Vada Dharmam Chara. Speak the truth. Walk your dharma. Never neglect your own study. And then 4 instructions that all of India and Hindus everywhere can still recite. Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Atithi Devo Bhava. Let your mother be a god to you. Let your father be a god to you. Your teacher, let your teacher be a god to you. And finally, the guest you welcome in your home, let them be a god to you. That reverence rises in later texts to its famous summit. The verse sung across the country every Guru Purnima from the Guru Gita, traditionally placed in the Skanda Purana. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara. The Guru is Brahma, the Guru is Vishnu, the Guru is Shiva, the Guru is the supreme reality made visible, and to that Guru I revere, I respect, and I bow. These are radical words, and the tradition knew exactly how radical, which is why it built in quality control. The Mundaka Upaniṣad specifies whom to seek. A teacher who is a Srotriya, meaning learned in the scriptures, and a Brahmanista, actually someone who is established in the truth he teaches. Learning without realization, realization without learning, neither qualifies. The very Upanishad that gave us Guru, remover of darkness, spends its preceding verses listing the marks of what makes a genuine teacher. A tradition that reveres the true Guru this highly is, by the same measure, very strict and unsparing about who the false one is. You have to walk the talk, you have to practice what you preach, is essentially what they are saying. Here's the image I can't shake. When one lamp lights another, the first actually loses nothing, and the other light doubles. This is the entire theory of the Guru-śiṣya paramparā, the unbroken teacher-student chain, that knowledge as one wealth that grows by being given away. When you share knowledge, your light doubles, your knowledge doubles. One light or one lamp giving to another doesn't mean that the first one loses its light. In fact, the light doubles, the knowledge doubles. So this Guru Purnima, as in the tradition's invitation is simple, and it extends far beyond ashrams and robes. Bow in person, in memory, even just in thought, to whoever lit your lamp. Maybe a parent, maybe a professor, maybe the teacher who saw something in you before you even did. But that image leaves one enormous question still burning. If knowledge in this tradition lives in the people, passed flame to flame, generation to generation, mouth to ear, then how on earth did its oldest text, the Vedas, survive thousands of years? Most of them without ever writing anything down, and arrive so intact that the recitation is now a UNESCO recognized masterpiece. The answer is the most sophisticated error correction system ever built out of human memory. That's a soon to come future video, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you there. Please share your thoughts, your questions, any comments you'd like to add, and thank you so much for watching. Delightful Guru Purnima to all of you. Namaste.